This story feels like it's ripped straight from a modern political thriller, but it's thousands of years old. We're looking at a kingdom caught in a total death spiral, a place where betrayal is just the fastest way to get to the top, and somehow each new leader manages to be even worse than the last.
So, this really brings us to the core question of this whole story. What actually happens when a nation's leadership just keeps getting worse? I'm not talking about just one bad king. This is about a pattern, a kind of corruption that feeds on itself, generation after generation, until the whole system is just teetering on the brink of collapse.
Okay, so before we dive in, there's one key idea you have to get to understand any of this. It's called the sin of Jeroboam. Think of it as the original sin of this kingdom. The first king, Jeroboam, set up these idol worship centers, and it wasn't just a religious thing. It was a shrewd political move to consolidate his power. This becomes the fatal flaw, the corrupt foundation that every single king we're about to talk about builds their reign. Our story really gets going with a guy named King Baasha. He grabs power and he actually holds on to it for 24 years, which for this time period is pretty long. But here's the thing. Despite that stability, the verdict on him is simple. He just followed the corrupt playbook. He continued the sin of Jeroboam. And for sticking to that corrupt playbook, he gets one of the most chilling prophecies you can imagine. The prophet Jehu shows up and delivers this message, which is basically a curse of complete and utter annihilation. We're not just talking about death here, we're talking about a death so dishonorable your family won't even get a proper burial. The stakes are now crystal clear and they are brutal. So yeah, 24 years. On paper, that looks pretty stable, right? Well, that's all about to shatter.
Because next up, you've got his son, Elah, and his reign, a measly 2 years. You can just feel the pace of things starting to unravel, and it's picking up speed.
And hey, if you thought 2 years was fast, buckle up. The next king, Zimri, lasts for a grand total of 7 days. 7! We've gone from 24 years to 2 years to 1 week. The kingdom is officially in a chaotic freefall. Power is changing hands faster than news can even travel. So how does a kingdom fall apart that quickly? Well, it was a shockingly simple betrayal. King Elah is over at his administrator's house having a party, getting wasted. He's completely vulnerable, and his own chariot commander, Zimri, sees his opening. He just walks in and kills him. It was swift, it was opportunistic, and it was deadly. And just like that, the prophecy comes true. The very first thing Zimri does once he's in charge is a ruthless purge. He wipes out Baasha's entire family, all his relatives, his friends, his political allies. That curse from years ago is fulfilled with terrifying speed. The dogs and the birds get their feast. I mean, Zimri's 7-day reign was just pure chaos. On the very same day he murders the king, the army, which is out on a campaign, hears about the coup. They don't accept it for a second. They immediately declare their general, a guy named Omri, the new king. Before the week is out, Omri's army is at the gates of the capital and they take the city. So, trapped, with Omri's army flooding the city, Zimri makes a final, desperate move. He locks himself in the most fortified part of the palace, the citadel, and he lights it on fire with himself inside. He chose a fiery death over being captured, a pretty dramatic end for a guy who was king for a week. So you look at all that, the murder, the massacre, the suicide, and what's the final judgment on Zimri? It's the same, old story. He did evil, following the ways of Jeroboam. He didn't break the cycle, he just sped it up. He was just another broken part of it. But hold on, Omri's not king just yet. The kingdom literally splits in two. Half the people decide to back some other guy, Tibni. The other half, mainly the army, are with Omri. And what follows is a full-blown civil war. In the end, as it often happens, the side with the bigger army won. Tibni's faction was defeated. He died, and Omri finally took the throne. Okay, so Omri, this guy is actually a big deal. He's not just another warlord. He ends the chaos and brings stability for 12 years. He's a powerful general, and most importantly, he does something huge. He buys a hill and builds a brand new permanent capital city, Samaria. By any normal historical standard, Omri was a successful, powerful, nation-building king. But here's the kicker. Despite all his political success, his military power, his new city, the biblical narrative delivers an absolutely stunning verdict. He didn't just commit the sin of Jeroboam, he was worse. He sinned more than all those before him. He didn't just continue the corruption, he took it to a whole new level.
I mean, if Omri was worse than everyone who came before, how much lower can you possibly go? Well, you get his son, Ahab. The story sets him up as the horrifying climax of this entire downward spiral. This is rock bottom.
And this table just lays it out perfectly. It's like a staircase going down. You start with Baasha, who just continues the old sin. Then you get to Omri, who escalates it. He's worse than all the others. And then comes Ahab, who gets the same charge but turned up to 11. He did more evil than any of them. The decay is methodical, and it's undeniable.
So what's on Ahab's rap sheet? How did he manage to top his father? Well, first off, he looked at that foundational sin of Jeroboam and basically considered it trivial, no big deal. Then he married the foreign princess Jezebel and didn't just tolerate her gods, he actively sponsored them. He started serving and worshiping Baal, building a huge temple for him right in the new capital, and even put up an Asherah pole. He wasn't just continuing the old corruption, he was importing brand new kinds.
And that brings us to the final, damning verdict on Ahab. This is it. This is the bottom line. After this whole line of wicked kings, Ahab is the one singled out as provoking God's anger more than all the other kings of Israel combined. It doesn't get any worse than that.
So you step back and look at this entire domino effect, from Baasha's predictable sin to Omri's escalation to Ahab's enthusiastic corruption, and you have to ask yourself, why does this ancient story still hit so hard? Why does this pattern of leaders not just repeating, but escalating the mistakes of the past feel so familiar?
And here's the takeaway, the thing that echoes through history. Not a single one of these men tried to fix the broken system they inherited. Every one of them took over a kingdom built on that original sin, and instead of trying to reform it, they just doubled down. They thought their power, their army, their own cleverness would let them get away with it, that they could outrun the consequences. And this ancient story makes one thing perfectly clear. They were all wrong. The pattern always wins. And that leaves us wondering, what patterns are we inheriting today?